He always thought their bond was simple, warm, comforting, easy. They had been friends for what felt like forever. The kind of friendship that didn't require effort, that grew without needing water, like wildflowers that bloomed out of nowhere. They met in college, sat beside each other in a class neither of them cared much about, and started talking between lectures, first about books, then about music, then about life. Somewhere along the way, they simply became a thing, not in the romantic sense, but in that quiet, dependable way that meant she was his person. And maybe he was hers too. They texted every morning without fail, met for coffee when schedules allowed, shared playlists on rainy days, and talked each other through family drama and career doubts. It was easy, uncomplicated, familiar. But lately, something had changed. He noticed it in the silences, in the way her laugh lingered in his mind longer than it should, in the way his heart beat faster when she tucked her hair behind her ear or bit her lower lip while thinking. It wasn't sudden, it was subtle, like the slow drift of seasons, when you don't realize summer has ended until the wind carries a chill. One evening, they sat on the rooftop of her apartment building, sharing a blanket and a box of her favorite chocolate chip cookies. The city lights sparkled below, and above them, stars peeked through a hazy sky. She leaned her head against his shoulder without a word, and he let her, because it felt natural, because it felt like home. But then she sighed, not a tired sigh, not sad, just quiet, like she was holding something back. "Do you ever wonder what we are?" she asked, almost too softly. He froze. His fingers stopped mid-reach for another cookie. His throat went dry. "What do you mean?" he asked, though he already knew. She smiled at the city lights, not at him. "I mean, people ask if we're together. My sister does it all the time. I always say no, but sometimes I wonder if I'm lying." He felt 1,000 things at once: surprise, fear, hope, panic. Her words echoed in the space between them, louder than they had any right to be. "I never wanted to ruin what we have," he said after a pause. "You mean too much to me." She nodded slowly. "You mean too much to me too. That's why I never asked." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, heavy, expectant, the kind of silence where every unspoken thing floats in the air, thick and fragile. He turned his head to look at her, really look at her. The way her eyes shone faintly in the dim light, the way her fingers toyed with the edge of the blanket, the nervous tension in her posture that mirrored his own heart. "I don't know when it changed," he admitted, "but lately, I catch myself wondering what it'd be like if we tried." She finally looked at him, and in her eyes was that same flicker of something waiting, something felt but never said. "I'd rather try than always wonder," she whispered. That sentence stayed with him long after the moment passed. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't hold hands, but something shifted. Something unnamed stepped into the space between them and made itself at home. They were still friends, still shared cookies, still texted every morning. But now, every glance carried new weight. Every brush of fingers was a question. Every laugh felt louder, closer, fuller. Were they just friends? Or something more? They didn't have the answer yet, but maybe, for the first time, they were both ready to find out. It wasn't that she changed. It was that he started noticing the way she always remembered to bring his favorite coffee to Sugars, no cream even when he forgot to ask. The way she'd laugh at his worst jokes, not because they were funny, but because he had said them. The way she'd quietly place a hand on his shoulder when she sensed he was overwhelmed, not saying a word, just letting him know she was there. He thought about those moments now, not in the middle of them, but in their absence. She was still around, still his friend. But lately, she'd become a little quieter, a little more distant. Her texts didn't come every morning anymore. Her responses felt shorter, more cautious. And when they did meet, she smiled the same way, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. He hadn't realized how much he relied on her presence, how the rhythm of his days had started to orbit around her when they'd talk, when they'd meet, even when they'd just sit in silence and pretend to watch the movie but actually be lost in thought. And now, something in that rhythm was broken, offbeat, just slightly enough to ache. He found himself scrolling through old messages, wondering when the change had started. Was it when he missed her call that night? When he casually mentioned he might be seeing someone, just to test his own heart? Or was it simply time doing what it always does, slipping between people too quietly to notice? One evening, he spotted her across the street from their favorite bookstore. She was laughing, really laughing, with someone else. A guy he didn't recognize. His chest tightened. It wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was something older, something softer, like a realization blooming too late. He had been holding something precious without knowing it. And now, it might already be slipping from his grasp. Later that night, as rain began to patter against his window, he sat with a cup of lukewarm tea and tried to trace the memories. Not the big ones, the little things, like how she always carried a book in her bag even when they were going out somewhere noisy, like how she'd send him pictures of sunsets or a stray cat curled up in a bookstore window, followed by a simple message. "This reminded me of you." Like how she once waited in the cold for almost an hour because he got the time wrong and didn't even get mad. It was all there. Signs of what she meant to him. He just hadn't seen it. And now that he did, he couldn't unsee it. He picked up his phone more than once that night, starting a message, deleting it, starting again. What could he say? "I miss you." Too vague. "Are we okay?" Too confrontational. He finally typed, "I've been thinking about the time we ran in the rain from that street cart, laughing like idiots." She didn't reply that night, but he hoped she remembered, because he was starting to realize that love doesn't always begin with fireworks or grand declarations. Sometimes it begins with the way someone listens, the way they show up, the way they see you, even when you're not looking. And now, he saw her, not just the friend she had always been, but the person who had quietly taken up space in his heart. All this time, he thought she was just someone special in his life. Now, he wasn't so sure she hadn't been the one all along. At first, it was just a missed call, then a text, seen but not replied to, then a week passed with no plans, no spontaneous coffee meetups, no midnight voice notes, with something silly or something deep. He told himself it was nothing. Life gets busy, people drift in and out. That's normal, right? But it wasn't, not with her, because her absence wasn't just silence, it was loud. It echoed in the places where her presence used to fill the space, where her laugh used to lift the air, where her quiet understanding used to settle his chaos. He kept checking his phone, hoping for a message, even something small. "Hey, thinking of you." Or one of her random photos. A quote from a page she knew he'd love, a rain-drenched window, a stray cat with a look that said "don't mess with me." But nothing came, and still, he didn't know what to say. He typed and deleted a dozen different messages over a few days. "Is everything okay?" Too generic. "I miss talking to you." Too vulnerable. "Did I do something wrong?" Too direct, too much like he was admitting something even he didn't understand yet. Instead, he said nothing, and neither did she, and that silence grew heavier with each passing day. He saw her once, across the street from the park they used to walk in. She was sitting alone, her hair pulled back, eyes scanning something on her phone. She looked tired, different. He almost called out, almost crossed the street, but something in her expression stopped him. She didn't look like someone waiting for him. She looked like someone trying to disappear. He walked away. It was only later, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, that he allowed himself to admit what had been quietly unraveling inside him. This ache in his chest, this emptiness where their friendship used to live. It wasn't just loneliness. It was loss, because somewhere between the shared coffees, the inside jokes, and the quiet moments when nothing needed to be said, he had fallen for her, and now she was slipping away. He hadn't realized how much she meant to him, not fully until she wasn't there. It was strange how love could build itself quietly, almost invisibly, not with fireworks or declarations, but with the sound of her laughter, the way she remembered the smallest things, the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. She never said she loved him. He never said it either, but now, he wished he had. Now, he wondered if maybe she had pulled away because she had started to feel something too and didn't know what to do with it. Maybe she was scared, maybe she was protecting herself, or maybe he was just too late. He thought about all the things he could have done differently, the conversations he could have started, the moments he let pass because he thought they had time. But love doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It slips into everyday life, hoping to be noticed until it's gone. He finally opened their chat, scrolled up through the old messages, photos, jokes, long paragraphs about nothing and everything. Then, without thinking too much, he typed, "I miss the way we used to talk. I don't know what's changed, but I feel it. And maybe I should have said this sooner, but I care about you a lot." He didn't hit send right away. He stared at the message for a long time, then pressed send. and waited, heart pounding, breath shallow, realizing that sometimes you don't really understand how much someone means to you until you're staring at the space they've left behind. He hadn't planned to think about her that night, but when the world slowed down and the streetlights cast golden shadows on his bedroom walls, her memory crept in, quiet, persistent, unshakable. It started with a song, a melody playing from someone's open window down the block. It was the kind she always liked. Simple, soft, acoustic, the kind of song that spoke more with silence than sound. He remembered her once sending it to him with no message attached, just the track. He hadn't thought much of it then. Just another piece of her world she shared so effortlessly. But now, it hit different. Now, it felt like a confession hidden in chords, and that's when it began, the reel of memories unspooling, frame by frame, rewinding their story. He remembered the day they got caught in the rain. No umbrella, laughing like fools as they ducked under the awning of a tiny bookstore. She was soaked, her hair sticking to her face, but she didn't care. She had turned to him and said, "You know, I think rain has a way of making you feel everything more clearly." He'd just smiled, nodding like he understood, but he hadn't. Not then. Now he did, because he remembered the look in her eyes when she said it, like she was trying to tell him something without saying it directly. He remembered the way she always noticed the little things, how she made sure he had his favorite candy when he was stressed, or the way she quietly pulled him away from crowded rooms when she sensed his anxiety rising. At the time, he thought she was just being kind. Now, he saw it for what it started with a message, a simple one, not dramatic, not angry, just a short line that hit like a knife to the chest. "Maybe it's better if we take some space." He read it over and over, thinking surely he had misunderstood. There had to be context. He missed something she'd said earlier that explained it. But as he scrolled back through their recent texts, short, distant, careful, he realized the context had been building for weeks. He just hadn't wanted to see it. He stared at the glowing screen in the dark, heart thudding in a rhythm he couldn't calm. His room, once familiar and quiet, now felt suffocating. Every second passed like a weight pressing down on his chest. Space? What kind of space meant she'd stop answering? What kind of space meant she might be gone forever? He got up and paced the floor, his mind unraveling. Scenes flashed through his memory, the way she used to laugh so freely when they were together, how her hand would linger near his on the couch like she was hoping he'd reach for it, the way she looked at him full of hope when she thought he wasn't paying attention. And suddenly, he saw all the moments he had missed, or worse, dismissed. All the signs had been there, the way her eyes dimmed when he talked about someone else, how her messages grew shorter, not because she had less to say, but because she had stopped expecting him to understand. The way she slowly stopped sharing pieces of her day with him, one after another, until only silence remained. Now, he sat with that silence, and it screamed. His phone vibrated again, a second message. "I'm sorry, I can't keep holding on to something that only hurts." That's when it happened. The panic, the raw, unmistakable panic of realizing you're about to lose the one person you never admitted you couldn't live without. His knees buckled as he sat on the edge of the bed, his hands gripping his phone like it might break under the pressure. His throat burned. He tried to breathe, but every breath felt like it scraped against his ribs. He thought about calling her. He didn't. He thought about running to her place. He didn't. Instead, he did the one thing he had never done. He let himself feel it, all of it, the regret, the fear, the aching clarity that came crashing in like a tidal wave. He was in love with her, not in a soft, maybe one day kind of way, not the kind of love you grow into over time. He loved her in the way you realize when it's too late, when the threat of her absence makes everything else fade into background noise. He had taken her for granted, her kindness, her presence, her patience, all the little ways she loved him, quietly, consistently, without needing anything in return, until she did, and he hadn't shown up. He hadn't said what she needed to hear, hadn't noticed what she needed him to see. And now, he might have lost his chance. Outside, the sky rumbled with distant thunder. It was the kind of night they used to stay up talking, sharing music and stories and secrets. Now, the silence felt like a grave. He finally picked up his phone. His fingers trembled as he typed. "I didn't know what I felt until I thought I'd lost you. I don't want space. I want you. Please, talk to me." He stared at the message, knowing it might be too late. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't. Maybe love, even if spoken late, still had time to be heard. And so he hit send, then waited, and hoped. He didn't think. He just ran, out the door, down the street, his heartbeat pounding louder than the wind rushing past his ears. He didn't care about the cold or the rain starting to drizzle from the sky. All that mattered was her. He had to see her. He had to say it. His chest ached with everything he'd held in too long, words he'd ignored, feelings he'd buried under the comfort of just friends. But now that comfort felt like a lie he couldn't keep living. He couldn't let her slip away, not now, not after everything. When he reached her street, his breath caught in his throat. Her porch light was still on. That little golden glow had never meant more than it did in that moment. It meant she was there. It meant he still had time. He took the steps two at a time and knocked harder than he meant to, more desperate than he wanted to show. But he was desperate. For her, for the truth, for another chance. The door opened slowly, and there she was, no makeup, hair pulled back, eyes wide with surprise. He stood there, drenched in rain and emotion, unable to say anything at first. For a moment, all he did was look at her, the girl he should have seen clearly from the beginning. The girl who had been more than a friend. Long before he had the courage to admit it, she stepped back silent. He walked in, then he broke. "I was an idiot," he said, voice shaky but sure. "I thought I could keep pretending what we had was just friendship. I thought I could ignore how it felt when you laughed, how it mattered when you remembered the small things, how it hurt when you started to pull away." She didn't move, but her eyes softened. He kept going. "I didn't see it until you started slipping through my fingers, until that message. And then I couldn't breathe, because the truth hit me so hard. I couldn't pretend anymore." He stepped closer, not too close, just enough that she could hear the honesty trembling in his voice. "I love you," he said. "I don't know when it started, or maybe I do, and I just didn't want to risk it. But I love you, and the thought of losing you, really losing you, terrifies me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Still," she said nothing. So he took another step. "I'm not here to ask you for anything you don't want to give," he added gently. "I'm here to tell you that you matter to me, more than anyone, more than anything. And if you still feel even a little of what I do, just a little, then I'll wait. I'll fight. I'll do whatever it takes." The silence that followed stretched between them like the pause before a great shift, like the world itself was waiting to exhale. Then, she reached out, her hand brushed his, tentative, warm, and finally she spoke. "I waited for you to see me," she whispered, "and when you didn't, I thought maybe I was wrong." "You weren't," he said, holding her gaze. "You never were." She let out a shaky breath, then she stepped into him, and everything, the distance, the fear, the unspoken words fell away. He wrapped his arms around her like a promise, holding her as though he could memorize the feeling. Because this was the moment he would never forget. The moment he stopped hiding. The moment he said what had always been true. The moment she knew she'd never been invisible to him. Not anymore. Not ever again. And outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, the storm had finally passed. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at him. Her eyes were glassy with tears, but they didn't fall. They shimmered, full of something that looked like hope wrapped in hesitation, the kind of emotion that had waited far too long to be named. She stood there in the quiet, her lips slightly parted, her chest rising and falling as if her whole heart was caught between what had been and what could finally be. And then, she smiled. Not the kind of smile she gave when someone held the door, or when she was amused by a passing thought. No, this smile was something different, something soft, honest, tired, but full of love, like she had finally stopped holding her breath after years of pretending she didn't need air. He didn't say anything either. He didn't want to ruin the moment by rushing it. Instead, he simply stood still, watching her, feeling the weight of every shared glance, every almost touch, every moment where love had been present but unnamed. And now, standing in the space between them, that love waited, vulnerable, real, and finally unafraid. She took a step forward, then another. He felt his heart beating in his throat. She stopped when she was close enough for him to see the flecks of gold in her eyes, the way her lip trembled ever so slightly. She looked at him the way someone looks at something they've missed for a long time, with awe and a touch of disbelief. Then, in a whisper so quiet the world seemed to pause to hear it, she said, "I was waiting for you to see it too." Those 9 words undid him, all the uncertainty, all the silent nights wondering if he'd imagined it, the stolen glances, the way her presence felt like home. It all made sense now. She had known, she had felt it too, and she had waited for him to catch up. Tears welled in his own eyes, but he laughed soft, breathless, overwhelmed. "I was so blind," he said, voice cracking. She shook her head gently, reaching up to wipe a stray tear from his cheek with her thumb. "No, you were just scared," she whispered. "So was I." He took her hand in his, holding it with both of his like it was something fragile and sacred, and it was. All this time, love had existed between them, not as grand confessions or dramatic kisses in the rain, but in the way they listened to each other's silence, how they remembered the little things, how their presence had become a language only they understood. This was love, not loud, not rushed, but patient, quiet. "Sure. I don't want to waste any more time," he said, voice steady now. "You're not," she replied. "You're right on time." There was nothing flashy about the moment that followed. No orchestral swell, no lightning strike, just the simple, perfect way her head fit against his chest when she leaned into him. Just the warmth of her arms as they wrapped around him, like she had always known where she belonged, and he held her as if to say, "You'll never have to wait again." They stood like that for a long while. No more words, no more uncertainty. Just the quiet hum of something honest and infinite being born between them. A love that had waited in silence, now breathed freely, spoken not only with words, but with every heartbeat shared in that embrace. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt completely seen, completely known, completely loved.